Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos, as you probably expect at this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Kirby's Eternal Dreamland Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch, basically based off from Kirby's Eternal Dreamland back on the Nintendo Wii, while we're still playing through Extra Mode. So, last time, we've essentially did manage able to fully completely done with the forms of Nutty Noon, and overall, that was actually a pretty decent run, despite the fact I did die a couple of times, most notably with all that unexpected, you know what I'm saying, with the crumbling platform that I somehow fell through for this point, and also because of the forms of that UFO mini-boss that I always have a trouble with. So even then though, chances are though, we actually still managed to go on through the entire world pretty decently, as I said before. So today, for this video, is about the fact that we're going to be continuing things on and move on to the next world in Extra Mode. And this one appears to be, of course, Egg Engines. So because of that though, looks like about the fact that we've almost getting close towards the end of this particular Extra Mode as far as this is concerned. Now I think, if I recall correctly, this is actually the last level in the entire, you know, Kirby's Eternal Dreamland as far as levels are concerned, that this is the final level to able to feature 3 energy spheres, because at this point in time in the later levels to come, we need to able to collect for about roughly 4 to 5 energy spheres at this point in time, especially concerning about that specific point that basically not only does the game start to get a little bit difficult, but it's also worth noting for that we still on Extra Mode, meaning about the fact that we might able to actually stumble across into ourselves the secret boss fights, which is only existence on the Extra Mode, including buddy forms within the true arena itself as well, but of course that could wait and join at some point by the end of the forms of this month in particular. So either way, a few things I want to explain for this point today, and that's what appears to be about the fact that today's date, of course, there's the 21st of August today, in some cases in 2023 today. Naturally speaking though, it's about the fact that there's some tons of stuff I would like to point things out. Well, first of all, it's about the fact that for those of you probably wondering, I apologize for my commentary is a little bit slightly iffy for this point today. Well, long story short, I almost had a bit of a headache during the course of the forms event yesterday, because my god, yesterday's finals in during forms of FIFA World Cup in 2023, it can be pretty stressful to me, especially noticeable because we were expecting that we might able to actually win for sure, but ultimately speaking, it was about the fact that, wow, me, Jewel, and the Powerpuff Girls and the ponies were like, we just basically just had enough of all that particular intense match or something like that. But we'll get to more details on that in a moment, because as far as I'm aware, during the forms event on Saturday, that Ray forgot to mention about that, during the course of the forms of Super Mario RPG, as you probably expect at this point, for what I've noticed is that Sweden did somehow manage to beat Australia during the course of the forms of, I would classify for saying during the forms of in a third place match, as far as I usually recall. So, but either way though, and on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that I'm pretty sure that, although, before I get into more details onto this specific topic though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that recently, there are quite a few stuff I'd like to point things out. First of all, that's what appears to be about the fact that when it comes to like DVD and Blu-ray releases during that specific period, did somehow recently got updated for only 2 films, most notably. That's what appears to be buddy forms of Transformers Rise of the Beasts, and as far as I'm aware, it's going to be releasing on the 9th of October for the sake of the films of this year. So, yeah, despite the fact that it got, like, mixed reception, and then, on top of all that stuff, though, the new Flash movie is going to be releasing at some point on the 18th of September. So it's going to be roughly about, let's just say, 4 days before the physical version of both Pikmin 1 plus 2 double bundle pack is about to be releasing during that period. So even though that's not much else to say about these kind of stuff like this, I guess. So either way, now as far as I'm aware, do you guys even remember about that specific point that we technically already mentioned about the fact that, I suppose, that Ray has technically already mentioned about this ever since in Super Mario RPG, that obviously we're about to get ourselves 3 brand new amiibos based off from the likes of Splatoon 3, specifically deep cut mascots as far as this is concerned. Well, apparently though is about the fact that he already mentioned about the fact that the Splatfest is going to be based around from deep cut mascots. It's going to take place, and as far as I'm aware, I think it's going to take place in between the 9th of September all the way up to the 11th of September. So because of that though, I'm sure enough though is about the fact that I'm pretty certain that the reason why that particular Splatfest coming up is going to exist is most notably because of the celebration of the 1-year anniversary of Splatoon 3's release. So even then though, but we still have no idea when does the actual side order is about to be releasing during that time. But I suppose we'll find things out, more details about that, assuming of course if the Nintendo Direct is going to take place during the forms of it next month, which appears to be of course September. So either way, and on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that obviously we've only got about 2 more days to go until Gamescom is going to take place. So because of this though, what's even great about this is that Sonic Superstars is getting its mentioning, or to be more specifically, it's about to getting its new information during the course of Sonic Superstars during the forms of Gamescom. And I'm pretty excited about this, especially noticeable. It might be the potential that we might able to get ourselves the actual proper release date for it. I suppose time will tell, especially noticeable because, well, relatively speaking though, it'll show us some more gameplay footage, and especially noticeable with some of the new footage on certain zones, or something relates to that. But then again though, we'll have to wait and find out during at some point in this Wednesday coming up, or Friday, or Thursday, depending on the forms of what days are going to show us the forms of some more gameplay footage of Sonic Superstars. So either way though, still I'm very excited about that, potentially speaking, as you probably already expect at this point in time. So anywho, and in addition to that though, is about the fact that let's mention about the forms of you know what I mean, with the actual final results in during forms of FIFA World Cup 2023 for women. Well, as it turns out, Spain did somehow win. So as a result, kudos to Spain, but as a result, the main reason being for this is because recently, that as far as what Ray has already predicted that during the course of the Super Mario RPG Let's Play so far, that basically he did say that the Spain track, as it turns out, it became true. So as a result, the actual name of the actual course is going to call it appears to be known as Madrid Drive. So because of this though, yeah, it seems kind of promising, all things considered. And some people keep on telling this, and that's what appears to be about the fact that it might actually be the true final of the actual Mario Kart Tour tracks, as far as I'm usually guessing this correctly. Well, mind you, about the fact that despite I usually just somehow keep on waiting to able to actually just begging for, you know, the 6th and final wave for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, potentially with all that DLC, all things considered. But chances are though, again, we'll probably be able to actually find out some more details about that during the course of the September's Nintendo Direct during that period. So even then though, now for what I've looked on the actual Madrid Drive, as far as the actual the track itself, it does look pretty nice, all things considered. And of course, the actual music composition is going to be based around from guitars and claps, or just clicks essentially, or something like that. Well, I do think it's a perfect choice for the actual music composition, because as far as I'm concerned, that Spanish is almost like a, I don't know what you would call it, despite the fact that I haven't exactly watched Puss in Boots for quite some time, especially noticeable because I was expecting to be able to actually see something else for some time now, but either way though. And in terms of the forms of what certain new content still brings us into, well, for at least what I've noticed is that the next tour, when it comes to the actual name itself, is going to take place in this Wednesday coming up, around the same time actually, as the forms of, you know, Gamescom 2023 is going to take place. So as a result, before I get into more details onto this though, as you probably already know, that when it comes to the actual one of those masks we're going to be wearing, Zero, based off from the final boss from the likes of Kirby's Dream Land 3. So yeah, pretty cool and swell at the same time. Even though it's kind of weird about the fact that this is the only mask in the game so far that I'm currently wearing, based off from the main antagonist during the forms in the past Kirby's Kirby's Adventures. Basically, it's about the fact I don't think it actually includes that unique sound effects or something like that. Kind of weird, honestly, because unlike the forms of how it does it for Dark Matter, does manage able to have themselves new forms of that specific matter. So either way though, so yeah, you get the idea about this particular solution as far as this is concerned. Oh, and another thing as well is about the fact that, yeah, the name of the tour is going to be coming up for the Mario Kart Tour's next tour. Is going to call it the Summer Tour. So because of that though, it looks like we somehow managed able to conclude the actual season-based, named tours, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I know for one thing, and that's what appears to be back in Junior forms have been, let's just say in 2022, that we actually got those specific 2 season names, which are Autumn Tour and Winter Tour. And now in 2023, we've now actually got not only Spring Tour, but also now we got ourselves Summer Tour. So because of that though, yeah, and in terms of what content they were able to actually bring, for the sake of the forms of the Summer Tour, as far as I'm aware, well, I do know for certain for one thing, in addition to able to actually bring ourselves one of the new courses they were able to introduce into ourselves, which is of course Madrid Drive, but also we're getting ourselves 2 brand new drivers, which they are both pretty much cosmetic for the most part. In addition to that, 2 Mii racing suits, as far as I'm usually concerned with this specific matter. And in terms of the forms of karts and gliders, it doesn't seem able to bring that much karts into the table, but at the very least they do somehow mention about 3 gliders as far as I'm usually concerned with that stuff though. But let's talk about the forms of what drivers they'll bring us into for the sake of the forms of the Summer Tour coming up. First one, which appears to be by the forms of a new Mario variation, or specifically another Mario costume variant. And except this time, it's almost like kind of similar to the forms of how it does it on Mario Musician or something like that, except the fact that it's now going to be wearing a black suit, which just kind of feels a bit of a similar vibe, or in some cases though, it's about the fact that Mario is wearing a black suit with the black Thindra based off from Super Mario Odyssey. So yeah, another one of those familiar outfits based off from Super Mario Odyssey after all. In addition to that, they're also going to bring us into Purple Toad as in the forms of a pit crew. But something tells me about the fact that, of course, it's gonna lock down behind the stupid rank cup system, which I was not usually surprised about this, especially noticeable. Still, I just really despise the actual, the ranked cup system, in my opinion, because of all the unlucky moments. And in addition to that, though, a lot of emphasis on RMGs every now and then, and it just feels like kind of a waste of opportunity in my opinion, even though that it was there for the sake of the forms. If you really want to get him, well, chances are though that might be seems the case or something. So, but anywho though, in terms of the Mii racing suits they are able to actually brings us into, not only does it bring the orange variation of that particular Mii racing suit, but also we're about to get ourselves the blooper Mii racing suit. So I guess that makes a little bit more sense to be able to actually bring blooper Mii racing suit, just because of all that summer themed vibes to it. And also when it comes to the forms of cards, they're able to actually bring ourselves a flame variant of the Zintaria, I think is what it says anyway. I apologize for that mispronunciation of that specific description for it. And in terms of the forms of the last cards they'll brings us into for that particular tour coming up, and that's what appears to be by the forms of Gold Pinch Hitter. So yeah, I guess it's that. Now, in terms of the forms of the gliders though, I believe, as I said before, they did somehow mention about 3 of them coming up. Like, as a result, they're gonna bring us a glider based on a Mario's golf cap. In addition to that, there's also a glider based on Luigi's golf cap. And finally, a gold variant of Mario's golf cap glider. So yeah, that's about it basically. So yeah, quite a few content here and there. Now, in addition with the forms of the Mii racing suit, I believe they did mention about the forms of the special items they'll bring us into. Like, for example, an orange Mii racing suit is gonna bring us into triple bananas special item. So even then though, I guess that might be helpful for some situations here and there. And as far as I'm aware, is that strangest of them all is that the blooper Mii racing suit is actually going to bring us into an ice flower item. So yeah, it seems kind of strange kind of thinking about it when it comes to able to actually notice about the forms of that item choice. Because I almost assumed they were able to actually bring ourselves the actual blooper item, but as it turns out, that does not seem the case. So even then though, yeah, pretty interesting with that particular item selection as far as the Mii racing suits as far as this is concerned, when that's going to be, seems to be the case. So, but either way though, that must have been said something I suppose, and oh jeez, that guy is easily getting my way. And let's just hope that we don't mess up with our jumps this time around though, because unlike in last time, in Junior Forms within the normal story mode, that obviously I always messed up with the actual timing jumps, and especially noticeable with the momentum as far as this is concerned. But at the very least though, we did somehow succeed this time around. So either way though, now let's go ahead and finish off the level from this point. Now as far as I'm aware, it's about the fact that the next secret room that we might able to find during the course of the forms of the 6th world as far as this is concerned, that won't be until for later, because as far as I'm concerned, that, as far as I can recall, it's going to be located somewhere in level 6-5, at least if I recall correctly, because I do notice about the fact that in Journey Forms of World 6-4, that we have to go into the actual sewers or something like that, so anyway, so the next thing I want to mention though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, out of nowhere, and that's what appears to be about the fact that it looks like we're about to get ourselves our next Mii racing suit, which appears to be Wave 40. So in some cases though, I do notice it's going to be a basic Mii racing suit in terms of design. Now as far as I'm aware, it's going to be like light blue color, because I think something tells me it might able to actually give us a hint or something. So even then though, yeah, I suppose we'll have to wait and find out whenever we you know, assuming of course if we're able to actually go back on to not only Super Mario RPG, but also with the forms of Sonic Frontiers as well. So, yeah. And the next thing I want to talk about, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, relatively speaking though, is about the fact that recently, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has come to a complete stop when it comes to the forms of the box office earnings during the forms of for this current run. And as it turns out, it did stop at specifically $845 million for its box office, which overall is actually not too bad. Certainly a lot better than the forms of how it does it for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, because of how the fact that that particular box office for that particular film, well, that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania film, as I mentioned earlier, that somehow it's gonna be a complete disappointment. So even then though, I just have no idea how that particular box office didn't go as well as the forms of how it does it as far as anything else to be expected. So but yeah, like I mentioned this before, is about the fact that the Gamescom 2023 is just around the corner right now, and it's going to start specifically until on Wednesday, you know, roughly the same day as the forms of the Summer Tour for the likes of Mario Kart Tour. So as a result, about the fact that we'll expect able to actually watch some gameplay footage is going to show us during the forms of Gamescom 2023. And on top of all that stuff though, that it's going to manage to able to last until quite a few days, potentially speaking. Like, it starts out Wednesday, the 23rd of August, and it'll end off in during the forms of the 27th of August, which I think was on Sunday, as far as I'm usually recall for that particular matter. So even then, seems very promising, all things considered. So even then, though, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Are you guys excited, able to actually watch some bit of news or more gameplay footage on certain titles, specifically Sonic Superstars, thanks to the forms of Gamescom 2023? Because I'd like to hear your thoughts, especially noticeable because still very excited, able to see what's gonna bring us something new for the sake of the forms of Sonic Superstars, because still we just really want to know what the actual release date is going to be releasing until. I'm hoping it not be delayed, during the forms of in 2024, but if it does, then that's fine, because obviously I'm still waiting for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, so at the very least though I can able to actually easily get hyped for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, including Super Mario RPG Remake and all that stuff. So even then though, we'll just see what happens in due time, especially noticeable because concerning that, still, it is very nice to see Gamescom has been returning after all these years, since during the falls within the pandemic years in between, 2020, 2021, and especially noticeable for 2022 in some cases though. But relatively speaking though, that's as far as I can usually say about this in terms of the forms of some other stuff worth knowing for. Sorry about a little bit of a weird throat situation right there, but that's just because about the fact that, well, relatively speaking though, it's just, well, I just need to rest my head a little bit after the events of that particular stressful, final match during the course of in yesterday's department. Although, sure, we did able to get a lot of progressioning though at the end, so at the very least though, we'll give that some credit for. So as a result, that it's actually pretty impressive how we able to actually win through after all these like couple of days, or anything else to be more specific. So everything else will be pretty much expected. So. And also, yes, about the fact that I think this is where the point about the fact that when it comes to more uploading schedules and journey forms of, Kirby's Return of Dreamland Deluxe, as far as I'm concerned, that until next week or something like that, we might able to actually change up the uploading schedule for the final time, for the sake of the forms of, mainly for this game most likely. That's most notably is because, as you probably already expect, that we've almost finishing up the entire game already for Kirby's Return of Dreamland Deluxe, as you probably expect at this point. So, relatively speaking, it's about the fact that once we completely done with every single world, during the forms of the extra mode playthrough of Kirby's Return of Dreamland Deluxe, we can pretty much expect that we were able to actually just to do the final 2 videos, specifically when it gets to the point until on the 29th of August, and especially noticeable with the 31st of August, so just to ensure that we were able to actually completely done with this game before we're able to move on to, current projects and all that stuff when it comes to doing Let's Plays department, but still. Anywho though, in terms of another thing I should probably mention about this as well, is that, relatively speaking though, yes, and that's what appears to be about the fact that Teenage Kraken, with that, the new DreamWorks movie and stuff like that, well, obviously, as you probably expect at this point, is about the fact that, obviously, Ruby, Gelman, Teenage Kraken, they ended up, the actual theatrical run, and as a result, it's gone in to become the lowest box office ever for DreamWorks, and as a result, the actual, the money they've got is $42.2 million, so globally speaking. So because of that though, meaning about the fact that it's a box office failure, so even then though, kind of underwhelming, but even then though, sometimes stuff happens, so. Anywho though, there's also worth noting for us about the fact that between these 2 projects, which are Zoo Pals, and especially noticeable out of nowhere, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, with that preschool series as far as I'm concerned, they're both decided able to make a massive comeback apparently. So because of that though, for instance, about the fact that with the forms of Zoo Pals, is going to make its return after 9 years since, let's just say in 2014 or 2013. Although, despite the fact that I've never actually got interested with the forms of Zoo Pals to begin with, to me anyway, that's just because about the fact that we're more into the forms of like other shows in particular, including that recently me and Jewel, and especially noticeable with the forms of the Ponies and the Powerpuff Girls, seems to able to really interested with the forms of one of those series we've recently watched during the forms within BBC iPlayer, and as a result we did somehow watch the Sarah Jane Adventures, and so far that we almost got to the point that we've almost end off the series, like as a result we're still on series 4 after all, so but even then though, it was actually quite interesting, despite how cheesy it was. But at the same time though, it's definitely worth a watch, even though it's like a spin-off to the Doctor Who franchise as far as I'm usually concerned with, because it's usually being created by the same guy as Russell T Davies. So yeah, very curious to check it out, especially noticeable because, well, they do have some of those familiar monsters or aliens based off from Doctor Who franchise, so even then though, yeah, I might as well able to say that I can definitely recommend it still. So either way though, yeah, that's basically all there is to think about it. So yeah, let's talk about the forms of the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse is getting ourselves the revival. For most notably for Disney Junior, as far as this is concerned, because after all, it's a preschool series, what you expect. So everything else though, I'm not exactly sure when does that particular revival is going to be releasing during that time, but honestly I don't normally watch that. Well, assuming of course that Sonic did tell me something, that back in during the forms of let's just say in 2007, that we firstly got into the forms of the introduction into the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and already right from the start though is that Sonic got bored of it, especially noticeable because obviously he's more into the forms of you know, something action-oriented stuff, like specifically with all that James Bond 007 stuff, because obviously he do enjoys that, including Shadow, and it wasn't until when Silver rolls around during 2019 that Silver also decides able to enjoy, you know, the James Bond stuff as well. So 3 hedgehogs in one, or 3 hedgehog trios decide able to actually prefer action-packed stuff, which is understandable because obviously they always enjoy those specific movie styles like this, even for genres and all that stuff. So, anywho though, so there's also another thing I should probably explain about this as well, is that I did recently looked upon the actual list of the forms of certain movies is going to get pushed back, thanks to the forms of the writer's strike, and especially noticeable just anything else in general. Like, I do found a couple of them, which there are, well, obviously for both Avatar 3 and Avatar 4, like for instance about the fact that obviously those 2 films will be delayed even further, including Avatar 5, until 2031, which is insane. And on top of all that stuff though, there's also going to be another one of those delays. So as a result, let's run down the list while this is going on. Especially noticeable, I already know that all of those energy spheres are pretty much in exactly the same place, so I don't think I can probably able to mention more about it during the forms of the specific run through anyway. So anyway, in terms of delayed films we actually got, thanks to the forms of that particular writer's strike as far as this is concerned, and those are Anniversary, usually distributor by Lionsgate as far as I'm concerned, most notably because the forms of production suspended, later granted a let's just say waiver to resume production, and especially noticeable with the forms of the Ultima, I think is what it says anyway, by 20th Century Studios, like as a result because the forms of production suspended. And for both Avatar 3, it's going to be usually in post-production suspended, and on top of that with Avatar 4, it's going to be production suspended, and for Beetlejuice 2, it's mostly the same thing as Avatar 4, and a complete unknown is most notably because about the fact that the production starts delayed, and yeah, that's basically all there is to it. The conjunction last rate is also going to be on pre-production suspended, as far as I'm usually concerned with that stuff though. And as far as Deadpool 3, as far as I'm concerned, it's most notably because the forms of production suspended, as far as I'm concerned. And same applies with Fantastic Four, which I think it's most notably because of the forms of, for Fantastic Four, for, you know, the MCU universe and stuff like that, I think what's causing it is the forms of casting process paused. So, yeah, that's about that. And, for Gladiator 2, it's most notably because the forms of production suspended, and on top of that there's also The Island, and that's going to be most notably because the forms of the production suspended after Bond companions, I think is what it says anyway, refused to ensure the movie anticipating the strike. And on top of that, there's also not only it ends with us, but also with Gyro number 2. And same applies with the forms of, another live-action movie, except this time it's Lilo and Stitch. And as a result, all three are basically on production suspended. And for Minecraft, it's also going to be on production starts delayed, and on top of that, Mission Impossible Dead Retconning Part 2, usually for production suspended, and of course another live-action movie. It appears to be Moana, which, despite the fact that the film itself wasn't even 10 years old at this point. Well, at least that about the fact that they did somehow got delayed for its strikes and all that stuff, at the very least, due to casting process paused. And as far as I'm aware, Mortal Kombat 2 is also going to get delayed due to production suspended. And on top of that, the movie Critic, and it's going to be on production start delayed. And Mufasa, the Lion King, is also going to be delayed for the sake of production suspended. And especially noticeable with Show by Oaks, but most notably for post-production suspended. And for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I can't believe they somehow mentioned Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is about to get delayed or something like that, if it's possible. So as a result, the filming will start in September, but without any, actors involved. But at the very least, though, we still got some bit of time. And Speak No Evil is expected to be on post, or in some cases, production suspended, as far as I can definitely tell for that particular description for it. And also with Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, it's now going to be on voice recording suspended and release date delayed indefinitely, which we definitely heard about that ever since about a couple of days ago. And next up we have is Superman Legacy, and that's going to be on pre-production suspended. And next up we have is Tron Eris, which, yeah, it seems that Tron is getting another movie after so many years since Tron Legacy or something like that. So even then though, that particular film is going to be on production starts delayed. And as far as I'm aware, Twisters is also going to get delayed for its sake of production suspended. And on top of that, the sequel of Dirty Dancing, and this is most notably because the forms of Pure production suspended and release date delayed. And on top of that, the Fast X sequel, because the forms of one of those multiple parters and stuff like that, is going to be on pure production suspended. And on top of that, the fourth Bad Boys film is going to be on production suspended. And on top of that, the How to Train Your Dragon live-action movie, and that's going to be on production starts delayed. And on top of that, with the forms of this very weird title of the film, which appears to be this untitled Joseph Kaczynski, I think is what it says anyway, production suspended, as far as what I did somehow notice something like this. And also an untitled Karate Kid film, and that's going to be on pure production suspended, and release date has been delayed. And also with the forms of untitled Ocean's 11 prequel, and that's going to be on the forms of production starts delayed. And when it comes to the last few, as far as I'm usually concerned with that stuff though, that's what appears to be by the forms of in terms of film releases during that specific period anyway. And those are the untitled 7th screen film, and that's because of the forms of pure production suspended. And on top of that, with the forms of not only 1, but 5 of those upcoming films, as far as I'm concerned. And those are, let's just say, untitled Universal Monsters film, and that's going to be delayed. And also with the forms of untitled Vermin, Let There Be Carnage sequel, and also Wicked, Wolves, and finally Welcome to the Fish Bowl. And they're all going to be delayed for the sake of the forms of production suspended or something like that. So, yeah, quite a lot of delays for that particular strike as far as this is concerned when it comes to its production values. So, but it might be still expected to be able to be released during that specific period. But then again, no, it's so difficult to tell at this rate, especially noticeable because we're still on 2023 as of now, but even then, no, that must have been said something, I guess. So, anyways though, in terms of the forms of the upcoming game releases, as far as I'm concerned, this one would appears to be kind of interesting as far as this is concerned. And that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, relatively speaking though, there's a game called While the Iron's Hot, is expecting to get the actual release date. And as a result, not only does it bring us a new trailer of the game, but also we get ourselves a release date. And I think it's about to be releasing at some point in November, which is roughly the exactly same month, as in the forms of not only WarioWare Move It, but also with the forms of Super Mario RPG Remake, as you probably expect at this point. So as you can see, we did somehow manage to found another secret as far as I've warned about this earlier. And that's what appears to be buddy forms of what else? Another room. So even then, no, except now that we actually stumbled across into ourselves some different enemies, some lesser amount of copy abilities, and also that, well, I think this appears to be the true final time we're going to be seeing the festival copy ability on screen. Especially noticeable because I almost accidentally said before about the fact that I almost assume about the fact that during the course of somewhere in World 4 that will be a true definition of the final time we can expect to see the festival copy ability. But as it turns out, it wasn't until for right now anyway that we actually did somehow discovered the festival copy ability for the final time for the sake of the forms of trying to find those secret hell rooms. So, but everything else will be pretty much expected at this point. So even then, no, yeah. In terms of everything else I could possibly explain about this as well, exponentially speaking though, is about the fact that what I've noticed is that about the fact that we are able to actually get ourselves a first look on certain images for the upcoming series, which appears to be buddy forms of, let's just say, a Godzilla spin-off, which appears to be called Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, is expected to be releasing soon on Apple TV+. So even then though, it looks kind of interesting to say the least. Oh, and speaking of such though, is about the fact that one thing I actually did not even realize is that during the course of it on last Thursday, as far as I'm concerned, that basically there was this iconic Pixar short called Luxar Jr. Basically though, it was about the fact that, well, Luxar Jr. It did somehow became 35 years old ever since in 1986. So yeah, it seems very, pretty cool, I might add, especially noticeable. Imagine if this, right, is that until we get to the point until in 2026, my god, that particular short film is going to be expected to become 40 until likely in 2026. So, yeah, time flies, you know? And I do remember about the fact that that short always pops up every time when, I believe Sonic did actually tell me something when he, first watched Toy Story 2 on the VHS, and basically though, that particular Pixar short always shows up before the Toy Story 2 movie actually starts on the actual VHS copies. So as a result, that he found it very, very enjoyable and iconic at the same time because of how revolutionized the actual CGI animation turns out to be. So even then though, and one thing I should probably also mention about this as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, we keep on speculating of what Trip's species is going to be about, you know, with that new character called Trip in Sonic Superstars. As it turns out, what I've noticed is when I did manage to research up on something, she's actually a species of sun gazer lizard. So, pretty interesting species, I might add. Especially noticeable, well, I could definitely already know from the start though, she's obviously a female after all. And as far as for her fur color, as far as I'm concerned, they are both brown and orange. So, yeah, that's about it basically. So even then though, still cannot wait to see how Trip is going to be able to get its full mentioning for the sake of the forms of one of those interviews. For the sake of the forms of one of those, I don't know, like Gamescom situation or something like that. But everything else though will be pretty much expected. So even then though. Anyways, let's go ahead and take on the next boss fight in the forms of the extra mode playthrough of Kirby's Eternal Dreamland Deluxe as far as this is concerned. So even then though. Now, as far as I'm aware, and that's what appears to be about the fact that this is going to be one of those secret boss fights that we might able to bump into later, once we're able to deal with the forms of, you know, the exactly same boss as before, but except it's going to be in color red. So, again, it's a bit tricky to explain because I know for a fact it's been about roughly 3 days ago since we've actually last played this for sure. So anyways, let's go and take on Metal General right here, except now he's on, you know, red color and all that stuff. So hopefully we'll try and able to beat the likes out of him with the glorious beam copy ability, but if not, then we'll try to figure out for something else, like, I don't know, use one of those souvenir items that we can probably potentially try to use to be able to actually taking down not only Metal General on the first phase, but more specifically on the second phase of during the actual boss fight itself, although except the fact that we might able to come across into a different boss fight type, so... But, yeah, that's as far as I can usually say about this, I guess, especially noticeable because concerning about that specific point, I just cannot even believe that time flies, and on top of that, still very excited to see what Gamescom is going to bring us something into, for the sake of the forms of this year in particular, so even then though, yeah, that's what I can say about it. So, and surprised to know is about the fact that I believe we've only got about 9 more days to go until the Mario Plus Rapid Sparks of Hope. Rayman in the Phantom Show is expected to get around the corner too, so even then though, that still, everything else goes all like flying by, you know, especially noticeable because concerning about that specific point that exponentially speaking though is about the fact that of course Ray the Flying Squirrel is expected able to finally coming back onto Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance after all, because after all, after he first fully recovered from that particular sore throat, at least never since in his continuation portion of Super Mario RPG after all, and oh, he can able to actually still can take control of the forms of Kirby on that specific cutscene right there. And this will pretty much lead us to the secret boss fight in only existence in during the forms of an extra mode playthrough of the forms of, you know, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and that's what appears to be this particular robot. So even then though, despite I couldn't clearly see on the actual description for it, but that's just because about the fact that I'm just still very excited able to actually check out the forms of Gamescom 2023 on live during at some point on Wednesday. I don't think it's possible I can able to mention more about it during the course of the forms of on Wednesday coming up, but I'm sure enough though about the fact that maybe Ray the Flying Squirrel will able to actually mention more of those specific stuff, until specifically likely also for, oh, how do you recall it, for the sake of the forms of when he's going back onto, let's say until the forms of not only Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, but also with the forms of Super Mario RPG. I think it's probably best if you'll mention more about it during the course of the Super Mario RPG continuation parts, basically, because as far as I'm concerned, that he's also almost done with the game, before we move on to other set of Let's Plays coming up, or even potentially speaking though, once we're able to get very close towards the end of 2023, that we'll expect able to actually just to do some little bits of other Let's Plays or something like that, so... But as you can see, unfortunately I did die on this particular fight, because let me tell you, that boss is pretty tough though, especially noticeable since that we still got ourselves a half portion of health at this for the sake of time, but luckily we got ourselves the awesome tornado ability, so that way we can able to thrash that particular boss fight. So basically though is about the fact that every time, whenever I was trying to able to struggle on certain boss fights, again, the tornado ability is always key in my opinion, especially noticeable. Well, assuming of course you need to able to be so accurate and able to actually just try to dodge his attacks, assuming of course if you basically done with the forms of that specific large tornado attack and stuff like that. So, but at the very least though, at the end of the day, ever since in yesterday though, is that I'm sure that England team did play very well, and especially noticeable, they somehow made it to the finals, just like the forms of how it does it on not only in Euros, you know, Euro World Cup in 2022, but at least in last year we did somehow win in Euros World Cup. But in addition to that though, during the course of the 2021 Football World Cups or something like that, for men's anyway, they did also make it to the finals despite we've been gutted by the forms of the penalty shootout. So, Yeah, it's pretty interesting with all this back and forth in between one of those very weird situations recently, especially concerning about that specific point that, again, we were expected able to actually go for this nice flawless run, but sometimes though, it's all depending on the forms of certain situations. They always trying to defend the ball or trying to play it offensively, but still, about the fact no matter what though, we'll at least expect that we'll watch some football again at some point in during the forms of in Paris 2024, thanks to the forms of the Summer Olympics coming up. So everything else though will be pretty much expected at this point. And there we go, folks. That pretty much takes care of the forms of egg engines. So I'm still surprised about the fact that that was go by a little bit lengthy, especially noticeable with that particular additional boss fight that, again, is only existence in during the forms of in the extra mode. So everything else though, I'm sure we'll meet up with him again at some point during the forms within the true arena. So, but that again though, that can wait at some point by the end of the month. So, anyways though, so let's just go and go back on to Merry Mega Land again for not only just trying to able to put up some more stamps into our stamp cards, but also with the forms that we can probably able to get ourselves some more items. In addition to that, more masks that we did somehow unlocked. So, seems like we've almost getting very close towards the end when it comes to unlocking certain masks throughout the game. So, yeah, I can't believe we're getting very close, guys. We are definitely getting very close. So, despite the fact that we actually got ourselves a massive, you know, a long gap when it comes to likely taking a break on certain scenarios and all that stuff, which, still, it is something else entirely. So, but either way though, yeah, there's not much else I can say, because I've already explained about quite a lot of stuff here and there, which I suppose that's a good thing. Especially noticeable, I just want to give you guys a bit of a recap on during the forms of what's been happening during the forms of the past few days or so. So even everything else though, not much else to say. So with that being said, I think we should probably be ending off this point right here, so join me next time for more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and that's what appears to be about the fact that we're going on to the 7th world, which is of course Dangerous Dinner. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Later, fellas.